I wish we had a lot more to talk about when we talk about the theater in pre-Columbian America. Unfortunately, there is not much that we can definitively point to, except that we do know that there was definitely theater in ancient America before Europeans arrived. We know it existed because we have pictures or drawings, I should say, and we have reports of journals. We have the journals of a few people, mostly Europeans, who described dances and costumes associated with religious rituals. We know, for example, there was one long journal entry by a Spanish monk, basically, with toured around to different places, and he described in the Aztec Empire there was this performance that he described that involved people that would dress up as animals or as various sick people and would all approach the idol of the god Quetzalcoatl and beg for healing, um, and would be rewarded in accordance with that. So there's characters pretending to be something they're not, pretending to afflictions that they're not, and telling a story through it. That's theater. That's theater. So we know that they had some theater. Sadly, we don't have much of it left because the Spanish destroyed a lot of it. Why did the Spanish go destroy all this stuff? Well, because the Spanish were destroying a lot of things that had to do with the native religions. It was very important to the Spanish that they would try to convert the Native Americans, the Aztecs, and the others to Christianity. And one way they tried to do that was to destroy their native religions in any way that they could. And so, since it was clear that this theatrical tradition was connected with their religious worship, the Spanish destroyed a lot of it. So we don't have a lot of it left. When the Spanish came to the Americans, their influence brought in a lot of things. The conquistadors brought their culture to America, including their theater. And so we start to see some of the European theater, especially the kind that was happening in the Spanish Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. And we start seeing this happening with the Native American population, which were basically forced to put on these plays. Mostly these were religious theater, kind of similar to medieval morality plays, which we talked about before in Theater Arts 1. They were what was called autos sacramentales. These were basically plays that were associated with the Corpus Christi festival that were meant to be able to teach people the religious value of various different ceremonies, especially the Eucharist, which is the ceremony of eating bread and wine in remembrance of Jesus Christ. Um, Now, the reason why the Spanish brought these to here and kind of, in a way, forced the native populations to be able to enact these plays is because they were trying to explain Christian religious ideas to native peoples. Uh, it's frequently not a great way to spread your religion by forcing people to believe it, but it is what the Spanish did. Is what the Spanish felt like they were supposed to do. They had a lot of zealotry for their religion. They believed very strongly in it, and they felt like they wanted to force people into believing that, which is really kind of sad, if you ask me, because that's not how Christianity was supposed to work. In any case, though, they did. And as a result, we don't have a lot left of the native Aztec and other American influences. We are able to see some of it, though, especially early, as people were trying to convert these people with Christian plays. We're able to see some of what they're trying to convert them away from. And one name that's very important to know about is this woman, Sanjuana Inez de la Cruz, an extremely important writer in early uh, American theater. So San Juana Inez de la Cruz was a Mexican-born Spanish nun. Her parents were Spanish, but she was born in Mexico. And she was very precocious and very literary, very interested in books and in words and stuff from a very young age. She learned Latin and also Nahuatl, which gives you an idea that she really cared about that part of her heritage as well. Nahuatl is a language spoken by the native tribes, and so she reached out to learn about that, and that's pretty cool. She was very precocious, as I said. She also she wrote her first play at the age of 8, so she was a very early writer. And who knows what could have happened in her life if she had been born today. But in any case, though, she apparently became a nun mostly so she could continue her learning. According to her history, she was offered several offers of marriage because she was very smart and very capable, and was basically said, she tried to argue with her parents to try to be able to disguise herself as a man so she could go to university. They wouldn't let her do that. And so she was supposed to get married, but she didn't want to do that because she knew that that meant that she would have to follow and obey her husband. And she didn't want to be able to do that. She wanted to be her own person and continue her learning. And so she became a nun. Now, there may have been other reasons for it. I mean, she could have, according to many of her works, it seems like she did have a very strong religious faith. So it could be that she became a nun for that reason as well. Now, the play that I want you to know about that she wrote is called The Loa of the Divine Narcissus. Now, first of all, to understand what a loa is comes from a Latin word that basically means praise. And these loas, several different writers in the Spanish time period, especially in Middle Ages and then up into the Renaissance, wrote loas. Loas were basically prologues. They were like short little beginnings to the autos sacramentales that would teach people about the gospel. And some of these were very intricate and very cool. And the Loa of the Divine Narcissus definitely is very cool. And especially what's neat about it is that it brings in a lot of the native Aztec beliefs that Sanjuana de Inez de la Cruz was surrounded by. And even though she was supposed to be pushing that stuff away, and a lot of other people of Spanish people during her time period were trying to kind of grind that culture into the ground, the Loa of the Divine Narcissus celebrates it. And so that's pretty significant. Let me explain what this play is about.
So here's the Loa of the Divine Narcissus. It begins with two characters that are dressed in traditional Aztec clothing. One of them is named Occident, and the woman is named America. And they basically start off by showing their religion, and they show how the gods have spoken to them and told them they need to honor them, and so in order to do that, they take seeds and human blood, mix it together into a statue that looks like their god, and then eat it. And then when they're finishing with this, along come a lot of Aztec people that do a traditional Aztec dance. Now, watching this at one moment, there comes in two people in Spanish-type clothing. One is dressed as a conquistador, and the other is a woman dressed in Spanish clothing. The woman's name is Religion, and the man's name is Zeal. And they see this, and the conquistador says, "Oh, these guys are horrible. I've got a sword here. We will stop them doing these terrible things." And Religion says, "Well, first let's see if we can try like mercy." He says, "All right, we'll do that. We'll let you try it your way." And so she goes to them and says, "Hey, America and Occident, maybe like not so much cannibalism and heresy." And they say, "Well, you know what though? We worship our gods in the way that we feel is right." And so Zeal says, "Okay, back to my plan," and there's a great big fight, and no surprise here, because it is, of course, written by Spanish people. They defeat them. But here's a bit of a surprise. After they've defeated them, Occident and America say, "Well, we are defeated, but we still aren't going to change the way that we worship our God, because it's important to us to follow our dictates of our conscience." And then Religion comes in and says, "Well, basically what you're doing is just a confused version of the true God, because we worship by using wine and bread, which is representative of blood, and so it's basically the same thing." And Occident and America basically say, you know what? Point taken. All right, then we will get baptized and join your faith. And then in the middle of it says, wonderful. Before we do that, let's watch this Auto Sacramentalis to explain more about this eating of bread and wine thing. And that leads into the Divine Narcissus, which in itself is another pretty cool story, because that involves a lot of Greek stories about a couple of Greek characters that are worshiping the wrong god and then are converted into the right way. So it's kind of neat, because even though it is very much saying Christianity good, other religions bad, at the same time, she's acknowledging these religions. They're not shown to be savage monsters. They're shown to be honest people that believe in what they're believing in and are honored for doing that. And along the way, she's showing a lot of traditional Aztec dances and things like this. And this is kind of cool, because this was at a time when all of these cultural things were kind of being stamped out by the Spanish, and they hang on to it to try to keep it alive. So that's something. Alright, so the discussion question I want you to leave for this one, we have gone to a number of different cultures and looked at some theater as it's been done in other places in the world besides Western European theater. I want you to tell me which of these really struck you and stuck with you the most. Think about when we talked about Sanskrit drama, and No and Kyogen, and Kabuki, and Bunraku, and Chinese drama, and Beijing opera, and this pre-Columbian kind of stuff. What's something that really struck you as interesting? Something you'd like to learn more about? Maybe even something you'd like to act in? Go ahead and write about that in the discussion down below. And in the meantime, enjoy what we're doing. Theater is for everywhere. All cultures had this. And try to remember that other cultures did it differently, but it was still, theater is a universal art form, not just a Western European art form. Thank you very much.